All right, so I found a film question online that we're gonna answer. Random person. The question was, on a budget of $600, what is the best camera I could get? Preferably something that I could shoot a professional looking cinematography reel on. Do you know what a reel is?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
Just your portfolio?
Yeah, pretty much. A reel is kind of like what you've done for the past year or couple years.
Yeah.
And you just do a collage video. So,
yes, sir.
We're going to give our recommendations on that question.
Okay.
You want to start or you want me to? I have two options. I have two ideas.
Well, I have two also. The one, if you don't want a lot of depth of field, I think the best camera for a good variety of shots or whatever you're trying to do is a GoPro. I think the newest GoPro, I think they just came out with the 9, or they're about to come out with the 9.
But they said they want a cinematography looking something. GoPro's not going to give you cinema looking stuff.
It's not going to give you cinema, but it's going to be good quality film. So I'm going to say the GoPro. Video. If you don't want good depth of field, if you know what depth of field, it's where things in the black background are blurry, but you are in focus. So it gives you that cinema look like he's talking about.
Yeah.
It's still good quality and great for filming action shots or like scenery, stuff that doesn't have to be blurry and have that big depth of field, but it's pretty cheap and it's a good camera. So I would recommend that as one of my options.
So one of the options I'm going to recommend is it's a little bit more than $600. It's going to be like $600 and a few bucks. I would recommend looking for something that's used from Blackmagic. The Blackmagic cinema camera or production camera, whatever it's referred to as. The Blackmagic company doesn't make these cameras anymore, but they were really good. So me personally, I film with the 4K cinema camera. I bought one, but that's like $1,500, even used on eBay. But they have one that's not 4K that I would probably bet works pretty well. However, you gotta make sure you already have your glass, your lenses. You got to make sure you have a battery because Blackmagic is notorious for batteries. So with this recommendation, you're going to end up spending about $800. But sometimes getting into cinematography, you're going to end up spending a little bit more than you thought you would. So get used to that idea.
Okay, and my second option, I'm pretty sure I had a friend that I went to film school with that purchased this camera for class. It's called the Sony Alpha A6000.
Okay, what is that? I don't know anything.
It's a Sony camera. You can take pictures with it. You can do video. You have to buy lenses. And it's going to be right at $600 with like one good lens, probably. But It's a decent camera. I've seen a lot of people use it that do like YouTube or just basic filming. It's good. I think the frame rate is pretty good, so you can get that good buttery slow motion feel. I think it goes, I don't know, I haven't looked up the specs entirely, but I would recommend that. You should look into that and compare it to other options. Maybe get a little bit more in depth than what I explained, but take a look at that at least.
What Josh was saying pretty much is with the slow motion, if you don't know, because I'm guessing someone who's saying cinema look and a camera for under $600 might either know some stuff or doesn't know anything at all, and maybe they know a few things and they're trying to be humble. Pretty much that just means like slow motion is like 60 frames or more a second.
Yeah.
So if you look at the camera specs, if you see something that's 60 frames or more that it says it can do, then you're going to get slow motion out of the camera, and you slow it down in your editor. However, I would say if you're looking for actually modern day cinema stuff, you can get good depth of field. A big thing to remember is cameras are not going to be what makes your stuff look cinematic, right?
It's going to be the lens, basically.
Well, it's going to be your lighting.
Lighting and lens, but yeah.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, any good camera like a DSLR is it's gonna give you a certain amount of depth of field, and well, your lens that you put on your DSLR is gonna give you depth of field. So a good zoom lens is good because you can zoom in and get good depth of field, but a good prime lens, which means it doesn't zoom, so one of those lenses that doesn't zoom, just is gonna give you good depth of field if it can go really high up in aperture. So something like a 1.8 or a 1.5 or even a 2.0. You know, if you can get your aperture up to there, then you're going to have the opportunity to have good depth of field. That's ultimately, I think, what people refer to when they say cinematic, because, well, there's two things. When people say cinematic, it's going to be depth of field and it's going to be your color correction at the end.
Yeah, and a lot of newer filmmakers or people who are trying to get this cinematic look, it's hard for them to understand the color correcting portion of it. It's like a picture. It's like you take a picture and you have to color correct it. You have to get it in Lightroom or some editing software.
Well,
and
Premiere or DaVinci, something that color corrects your video, not Lightroom. That's
no. That's what I'm saying. Like photography is when you take photography, you take the photo and you bring it into some software. I mean, like Instagram, it has filters for you to put on your photos because that's what's going to make it look the best.
Yeah.
It's the same with film. You're going to have to put it in some kind of software to color correct it to make it look better. Most of the time, especially if you're doing it truly the right way that you're supposed to be doing it, it's going to look flat and very bland, almost white, kind of no color in it, kind of ghostly looking.
That, and they refer to that as log footage. Yeah. So if you hear a term like S-Log, that means Sony log footage, or you see something called C-Log. Yeah. That's something called Canon log footage. That's what Josh was talking about. It shoots it really flat, so you have a very large range to correct it. So you don't have a whole lot of, when you're on set or you're out in the field and you're shooting, you don't have a large range of colors and exposure that you're going to accidentally overexpose or underexpose something. It gives you the ability to color correct it the way you want when you get it in the editing room.
Yeah.
However, if you're wanting something that's $600, you're not going to get anything that's actually 4K and probably does not shoot log footage. The Blackmagic that I mentioned might shoot log footage.
Yeah.
But like I said, I have the 4K version. So I don't even know if the regular version that just shoots 1080p, if that even shoots log footage. But most likely you're not going to get something out of a $600 camera that shoots log. But Canon, the one you have, that doesn't shoot log, but you can turn down the saturation.
You can adjust the settings.
You can turn down the contrast in the camera, and that can kind of be like a poor man's version of log footage.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But pretty much when it comes down to it, if you want something that's cinematic, you don't have to spend a lot of money, but you're not going to be getting 4K footage. More than likely, you're going to be shooting 1080. If you want something that's slow motion, you probably won't get something that's 1080 at 60 frames. You know what I mean? It's going to be like, 1280 by 720?
Yeah.
Something like that. So I would recommend adjust your expectations, but it's not impossible, because when it comes down to it, like me and Joshua already said, you're going to get cinematic footage if you color correct it well, and if you have good depth of field. That's what when people say they want cinematic stuff, that's what they're talking about ultimately, because that's what the average person sees as cinematic.
Yeah.
So, look at Canon. I mean, Canon has a variety of things. Just make sure you go in the specs and look to make sure that it records video, because there's a lot of Canon DSLRs out there that doesn't shoot video.
Yeah, that's great.
Just photography. But a lot of them do. So check it out. Make sure you check the specs before, like a Canon Rebel. A lot of those shoot video.
Yeah.
You can get one of those, and you can get good stuff out of that.
Yep.
Any other recommendations before we get stopped?
I mean, like you said, Canon Rebel, that's what we're shooting on right now. That's my camera. It's DSLR, Canon Rebel. It's an older Rebel. It's a T5i, but it's still good and it still works.
Yeah. And this is a pretty basic setup.
Yep.
But look, you can see. Get good depth of field in that. See that?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. You can get pretty good stuff out of this camera. This was like $500, right? With the lens, it was like 700.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can get something that looks this good for like $700.
Yep.
All right. If you have any questions for us regarding filmmaking, email us at wiseworksproduction@gmail.com.
Yep.
And we can answer your questions. Otherwise, we'll find our own questions. All right.